What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we're coming to you live from a couple of places on the internet. We are live on Crowdcast, YouTube, Facebook. Maybe you're listening to us later as an audio podcast. Wherever you get your audio podcast, it is all good. And I don't want to belabor this too much because I know Pete is champing at the bit here to
He's
get
a
going
champ,
because
all right.
he is a champ. This is the beginning of the month, and at the beginning of the month, we pay a little bit of tribute to our Patreon supporters, the supporters at the $5 and up level, by giving them a little thank you by reading their names. If you support us for less, that's fine too. But we're just not going to read your name. That's all.
We won't vaguely mispronounce your name if you don't get it.
Come on,
man.
man.
It's a little bit of pay $2, don't get punished, I guess is the thing. Pay $5.
Wow.
Uh-oh.
That's called reverse marketing. Go ahead.
I don't think that's working very well.
Let's kick it off with Otis Larson,
Aaron C. Hollis,
Adam DeRose,
Adam Harwitz,
Adam Marks,
Adriel Moreland,
Elena Fontenot,
Amanda Harris,
Andrew
Primo,
Andrew Tillman,
Beercat, PhD,
Benjamin Brown,
Carly W.,
Carrie Matthews,
Chris Leatherman,
Christina Germarillo,
still nailing it, Christina Rensfield,
Chris Terlizzi,
Clemens Lua,
Corbadorbadoodle,
Curtis LaRock,
Demand Ryan,
Dan Snow,
Daniel Cabral,
Daniel Fuentes,
Danny Heck,
Debbie Gloom,
Dennis Scott,
Derek Mainhart,
Doug Sodaway,
Dylan L.J.,
Eduardo Martinez,
Emmett Quish,
Aaron Dorian,
Jeffrey Risher,
Gerard DeVilliers,
Isaac Carter,
Jake Fry,
James Connolly,
James Kurtz,
Jaron Townsend,
Jason Donahue,
Jeffrey Whaley,
John George,
Jonathan Jong,
Jonathan McCool,
Joshua W. Broxson,
Julian Lobato,
KC Newhaven.
Don't do the crime if you can't pay Kevin Grimes.
Oh,
If the Kevin Kleins are rockin', don't come a knockin',
Kieran Broderick,
Cody Thomas,
Kyle,
Luana Thomas,
Lucas Inc.,
Mark Zeller,
Mac Tice,
Matthew C. Hernandez,
Megan Thigpen,
Michael Tillman,
Nelson Kelso Martinez,
Nick Graham,
Nick Grayson,
official CBC chef Brett Macris,
Orrin Dix,
Pedro A. Rangel,
Pete's Pretty Kitty.
Provocative Ambulance,
Rev Mikey,
Yeah, give him the title. Robert Pettinato,
Sarah Schottmuller,
Sarah Schaefer,
Scott Carpenter,
Scott England,
Stanley,
Tamila Rush,
Taylor Bryan,
The Big Flood,
The 12 Bench,
Thomas Glenn,
Victor Perez,
Will Buchanan,
W.M. Leach,
Zachary Bachman,
and of course, Zika's Viral Comics, a disease that is several diseases ago, so great to have you here. That's the list.
Shout out to the Sarahs. Thanks for supporting us.
Yeah, for real. Thank you so much to everybody. And I know I was joking about it before, but any level you support us at, we really appreciate it. It is patreon.com/comic book club for only $2. You get access not only to our Patreon Slack, which is very active and very fun, but also our back catalog of podcasts from 2011 through 2022, which is literally thousands of podcasts that you could listen to right now. Some of them even good.
Imagine comparing our 12-year younger selves to what we're saying right now.
What a time. What a
so
time.
full of hopes and dreams.
You know who else is full of hopes and dreams is our wonderful guests tonight. So I am going to bring in the first one here. He has a project from Zoop, which is called Odds and Ends, which is coming out very, very soon. Next week, in fact. So we're going to bring him into the stream here. Ladies and gentlemen, Kraig Rasmussen.
Hey, all right.
Hey.
Hello. Did I get it
everybody,
right,
how are you?
Did I get the name?
You got it perfect.
Yes.
First one ever.
Oh, man. There we go.
First one ever. It's a day full of awards.
Kraig, thanks so much for coming on. Very excited to chat about this project. So as mentioned, we are a week away from you launching your Zoop campaign for this. This is a very interesting one because, as the title indicates, it's Odds and Ends. It is a collection of a lot of stuff that you worked on over your career. So how did this come together, and how did you select the parts for this project?
Well, I mean, quality was my first criteria for selecting anything. I wanted to make sure
Great
the
choice.
story was told clearly. Yeah, right. I wanted to make sure the story was told clearly and that I liked the art and that I felt like in some way, at least, it stood up to what I'm doing currently. It does
I always go
back
with what's on
almost-
top of the pile. What's the closest thing to the top of the pile? That's just me.
Well, I mean, the most recent obviously would be the closest to the top, but I'm actually going pretty far back. I'm going almost 15 years back into the archives.
Wow.
But I will tell you, and this will be a reveal for this episode. I am doing a little bit of I shouldn't say a George Lucas. That still feels like a slur, but I'm actually remastering some of the older stuff. There will not be any ill-placed droids floating in a weird depth of field around anybody, but there definitely is a few additions going on, and I'm pretty happy with updating a lot of it at this point. So it's kind of
You're
fun,
changing it
frankly.
so that Greedo shot first in yours.
Nice.
Always. I mean, Greedo hasn't he always shot first? I thought. Sorry, you can just
Not
can
the
me.
total
Just-
sidebar, but isn't it crazy
So,
to think
look.
of George Lucas like not being able to sleep at night because he's like, Han, he can't shoot first. I gotta put the other guy who we never see again and make him do it. He's a millionaire.
But he's the
many
good guy.
times over.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
talk
many
us through
times.
some
I
of
don't
this
know. I mean-
material then. For anybody who doesn't necessarily know your oeuvre, as I like to pronounce it, talk us through that a little bit.
Oeuvre.
Oeuvre.
Get it.
That's it.
The gist of it is most of it is science fiction. There's a little bit of humor, and there's one period piece, like historical epic, in it.
Nice.
And in general, that's kind of the tertiary criteria, if you will, is the science fiction element, because that's what I'm branding myself as these days. Pretty much, the back of my business card says purveyor of fine science fiction, because that's. I kind of realized that at some point, even going all the way back to my childhood, my favorite movies were always the science fiction movies. And I did like the Chris Reeve Superman, but frankly, I liked E.T. and I liked Return of the Jedi a whole lot more as far as the first things I saw in the theater. So, these stories feel like they fit together in that way, and it's all got an element of world building that is very consistent. So even if the artwork isn't necessarily the same standard as I'm putting out today, the world building is actually, I mean, if I may say so myself, hold on, I got to pat myself on the back. It's pretty strong for what it is. So I'm just, I see a consistency in my own work. And a few years ago, right here behind me, I have the original edition of Odds and Ends that I printed for San Diego Comic-Con exclusively in 2017. And I only printed 50. They sold out pretty fast. And it was a thing that kind of had a shadow of a memory in people's minds, and some people were asking me about it. And when I went to look at reprinting it, I decided to go back into the archives a little bit more and dig a little deeper and see what else I had. And it turns out I had enough for 2 volumes. So both volumes are coming in at about 85 to 88 pages of actual comic book content, and then there's going to be a little bit of supplemental content for every story, probably. So they're all going to be two 100-page graphic novel anthologies, essentially. So, like I said, they all kind of match to a certain extent, and I cover a lot of science fiction ground, everything from the utopia to the dystopia to the post-apocalypse to time travel, pretty much anything I can get my hands on. I've been trying to cut my teeth on the genre of science fiction for a long time. So they all complement each other in that way, with the one exception of the historical epic. But since I have a time travel story that actually is edited in prior to the historical epic, I'm already playing with period pieces throughout the book. So it feels pretty unified, honestly. And I know that anthologies are not the most sellable or most popular thing. But that's not necessarily true. There have been some good anthologies that have sold in the past, and the Odds and Ends title is a tradition that I didn't even realize existed, because Richard Corbin put out an Odds and Ends of comic book work that he had done. So he's one of my favorites, and I feel happy to be included. Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, let me ask you though. What was it like going through your older stuff? Like, where you did you find those gems where you're like, oh, I thought this was good before, and now I think it's great? Was that like a nice sort of exploratory process just personally for you?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, right now I'm going through a phase of actually inking a story. This is the time travel character here on the cover of the original edition, and I had originally printed pencils of 11 pages of his story. And so what I'm doing right now to really sweeten the deal, on the new Odds and Ends release, I'm inking the entire first issue, so it's 24 pages. And there are elements of storytelling in there that I kind of wonder sometimes. I'm like, would I even make this decision now? Because this decision is awesome, you know? And I sometimes feel a little hamstrung by, you know, the comic book convention, and I mean, so to speak. No pun intended, but like the, you know, just wanting to have clear storytelling and wanting to use storytelling methods that are common to comics as opposed to breaking some rules here and there. And it is kind of fun to look at my younger self and be like, this guy's breaking rules all over the place. What a rebel, and kind of enjoy
This guy was crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, there's definitely elements where I'm impressed. There's definitely elements where I'm like, oh my God, that's a long neck. I need to fix those shoulders, you know, kind of thing. Like there's definitely anatomical problems that I have to adjust, which is, I'm kind of happy that in some cases I left some pencil alone so that I could go back in the long run and actually ink it and upgrade the quality. And I've been doing that kind of all the last year because I've been, for my own business, Monkey Gong, as a publishing label, like I said, I'm trying to build a science fiction brand. So for a while, I have been building up these different stories that are all part of the same world and same timeline, more or less. And so a lot of stuff was partially finished. I had chapters here, chapters there. And so I had already spent the last year kind of inking up some stuff and upgrading the quality and realizing that it wasn't that hard. And maybe, you know, that I was better earlier than I thought I was in some cases. And definitely, I got to tell you, there's going to be some stuff after this campaign is over that's going to be the real nuts and bolts of upgrading work, because there's a couple of things that I'm going to have to do something, because the quality of the stuff that's highest quality is I don't want to be impressed with myself, but you know, to be proud of your work is a thing that's really important to keep going as a creator. So now that I'm becoming proud of more of the stuff, there's a few of the stories where I'm like, okay, guy, you're going to have to do something, even though I do think they still fit. So
I love that you're proud of your past self, and that's inspiring you to be better now, but even better than you were. It's like a nice little. Every person, every creator should do this, no matter what their medium is. I feel like.
Yeah, interesting. I think so too. I'm learning a lot.
Just to take a big step back here, and we've had a bunch of different creators from Zoop, but I just want to make sure for anybody who is listening for the first time, what is Zoop? And how, if you could just talk about how you got hooked up with them and what eventually the campaign is going to look like a week from now as we're taping, but potentially people listen to this later when it's live.
Yeah, well, Zoop is a crowdfunding platform similar to Kickstarter, but it's for comic books only. And it has a little bit more flexibility. It's got add-ons, it's got a similar stretch goal structure, but it seems to me like it's not as beholden to the single project thing. Kickstarter doesn't allow you to launch a business or launch a label or, you know, launch a world. You kind of have to go project by project, which can probably be very good as far as funding it consistently and doing multiple campaigns throughout the year. But in this case, because I'm already in the process of launching my own label, I thought it was perfect to go with Zoop. And because I have been friends with one of the founders of Zoop through Comic-Con for almost a decade or more, just from seeing each other in the crowd back and forth, and knowing that he was creating this platform and then watching the platform kind of take off, because I had other friends like Dan Panosian and Gonzo, Jay Gonzo, do successful campaigns through there, Tony Harris. People that have good names and put out good projects with great art have had good experiences, you know. I mean, Dan Panosian's art book, one of the things I funded first. It's just I can't get enough of that guy's work.
Oh, yeah.
And he was happy with the experience, and if Dan likes it, I like it. You know, that's kind of how it goes. But yeah, in general, I like that it's dedicated to comics only, because it feels like it's immediately entrenching itself in the community, as opposed to Kickstarter, which is great for the community, but it's weirdly faceless as well. Like, it's a weirdly anonymous, not corporate entity per se, but it almost gets there to the corporate entity where you can't really like penetrate or see behind the curtain at all, you know. And I don't feel personal involvement from them as a company at conventions and whatnot. Whereas Eric and Jordan, I see them at conventions all over the place. I've already seen both of them now at 2 conventions. So it's just,
I don't want to scare you, but they're behind you. They're behind you.
Yeah, they're right behind you. It's.
I think you mean in terms of support.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Metaphorically, that's what we're always thinking.
Speaking of things that are behind you, you got an interesting murder board kind of set up. I'm always interested in how creative people stay organized. Do you have like outlines back there, or what is that kind of setup?
Sir, there is no red string on that board, so you can't call it a murder board. But
all right. I mean, there's a lot of post-it notes and different kind of,
Yeah.
But you are planning a murder, just to be clear. That's a note card board for murder.
Just to be clear, on this recorded platform, I am planning a murder, and I am going to murder the comic book industry.
Okay, we can arrest
work.
him. Wrap it up, boys.
The cops are right behind you.
Yeah.
Metaphor.
Honestly, I'm kind of addicted to the 3x5 card method for screenwriting or for just story writing. I learned it from Robert McKee. I read Story years ago and was working on a couple of scripts trying to put some stuff out for sale. And I realized that was the most immediate, Ethernet version of getting to the story setup. Like, instead of trying to noodle my way through a script, it's like I have, that's like the dial-up connection, and this is something much faster where I can just break down the story quickly and kind of have the structure in mind and kind of know what my goals are, as opposed to trying to find my way through it. And that sort of translated pretty quickly to just general project notes and, keeping story concepts sort of in line. And a lot of what you see behind me that I'm purposely blocking with my head so nobody screenshots and steals my ideas.
It's good.
I just have too many ideas. I have too many story ideas. It's one of the reasons that Odds and Ends exists, because there's just a bunch of stuff that I took a crack at here and there, and I was fascinated with the idea. And, I went far enough into executing it that it is relatively self-contained in each of the cases of the stories that are in here. And I want to say that there's at current count, there's 19 different stories or story concepts that are in the 2 volumes of Odds and Ends. So on the board there's another like 500. So it's, it's a way to keep myself as organized as I can. Yeah.
Ignore me for a second, but Craig's board, enhance. Computer enhance. Enhance.
Now
Got
steal.
Yeah.
I'm just hearing the Blade Runner sound effects now of zooming into the photo.
Yeah.
Track right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Still works.
So when the Zoop campaign does launch in a week, other than the books, obviously, what other odds and ends might people expect from the campaign?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Messed it up.
This here is Sojourners, which is a space monkey, simian space odyssey, I've been calling it, adventure that I put out for conventions over the summer and fall. That's 29 pages of story in black and white, which is the first roughly half of a graphic novel, and I'm really proud of that. It's my newest artwork that's been published as far as my own self-publishing, and so far the responses are great. Like, people are having a lot of fun reading that. I'm hearing actual, I think, objective, random responses to it. That's really nice, because I don't think I've ever had that for my work before, with the exception of being at a convention and having my work laid out in front of people. So it's the next best thing. I also have Technopolis here, which is an early edition of another graphic novel. This will probably be 3 full graphic novel books, and I have the first one done in pencil, and I'm in the middle of inking that. So both of these are readable. They're separate comics from Odds and Ends, so it's pretty easy to get a big bundle of comics right away. And on top of that, I also have a massive 2022 sketchbook that may actually end up being perfect bound like a graphic novel, depending on how much I choose to put in it, because I had a very productive year last year. There's sticker bundles, and there's like this shirt that you can get that'll be attached to, as an add-on. Call that Piston Head. I'll give a little more of a glimpse there.
Nice.
Just like to stick my chest out on camera.
Shirt flex.
Yeah, mad shirt flex, bro. So, in general, I'm trying to make everything that I can accessible, and definitely I'm offering a bunch of sketch covers. I printed sketch cover editions of both Sojourners and Technopolis, so I'm offering those plus commissions, plus headshots or busts and whatever. I mean, I'm just trying to make as much available as possible through this campaign, because, like I said, to me, it's kind of an overall mega launch. It's not really just for Odds and Ends, although that's how it started. So,
I'm putting my email address in right now so that I can get notified.
Yeah, that's awesome. Craig, this is so Thanks, cool. Justin. Such a great campaign, and it seems like so many things that you can get from it too, which is great. Again, It starts officially on January 17th. Is that correct?
Yep. Next Tuesday, 1 week from today.
All right, there we go. Good luck,
Scared,
Craig.
Excited.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
You're going to do it. You got a whole countdown thing going on social media. It looks great. You're going to do just fine.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very
Kraig.
much. I appreciate this, you guys. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks,
man,
Kraig.
It's a
No
pleasure.
problem. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming by.
Take care of yourself.
Enhance.
Take care.
That was the opposite of enhance. I kicked him out of the stream.
You dehanced.
But again, check it out at Zoop. It's called Odds and Ends. It launches on January 17th, and it looks very, very cool.
Yeah.
We are going to invite our next guests into the stream now. They've got a new book from Image Comics that is coming out called Black Cloak. Ladies and gentlemen, Meredith McClaren and Kelly Thompson. Hello.
Ooh, welcome.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to unmute Kelly. Kelly is unmuted. There we go. Thank you so much for coming. Very excited to chat about this. Very excited to chat with both of you. This book is really cool. But before we start, one thing I wanted to mention here. So in our Patreon supporters list, we listed official CBC chef Brett Macris. And that actually isn't a joke. He helps us out with some stuff sometimes. And one of the things that he does every once in a while, this isn't absolutely every week, but every once in a while, he designs a drink based around our guests. And that's what he did with his book. So I wanted to bring up the recipe here. He designed a drink called the Black Cloak. It is tequila, mezcal, coffee liqueur, orange bitters, and orange peel. It's dark and complicated. And it's
Just like Brett.
Just like Brett. Well, just like the book, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's very cool. And there's a light bit of a orange fantasy there at the end. So there you go.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yes. But why don't we chat about this book? Why don't we talk about this book, Black Cloak, which is coming out? So this has been running, Kelly, I believe, on your Substack for a while. Is that originally where it was and now it's moving over to Image, or did I get that detail entirely wrong? Oh, no.
I don't think we have her.
Oh, boy. All right. Meredith, why don't you answer that? I'm going to kick Kelly out and re-invite her in.
Okay. I'm sorry. The question was directed at Kelly. I blinked.
No, it's okay.
No, you got to redirect it
just
toward you.
if you want to talk about the inspiration behind Black Cloak. And Kelly, I'm going to kick you out and invite you back.
I think Kelly put it most succinctly just recently as Game of Thrones and true crime, but like the early seasons of Game of Thrones. So before
Right. The intrigue.
before people got upset with it.
Before they were robbing gold trains.
Kelly, are you there?
Well, I've been here all along. Can you not hear me?
We can hear you
now.
Yeah,
so
we
it's
can
great.
hear you.
Yay! I was so answering the question, Meredith. I really was. I was also raving about the drink and saying how cool it was and wondering why nobody cared.
That's good to hear you.
We care.
That drink is awesome. Thank you so much. Dude, I'll have to try it. If it's
Yes.
really that good, maybe we could put it in Black Cloak. That would be fun.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
I mean,
That's-
Brett's legit. Brett's the head chef at a New Orleans restaurant called Couchon. If you're ever down there, go to that place.
Well, he had me at tequila, so
Yeah.
we're in. I can't remember the question. Did Meredith answer it?
I sort of said it was like True Kind meets Game of Thrones, but the early seasons. So.
Yeah, so just before we even get to the concept, this started off as a Substack book, right?
The image, right, the image of it all. So yes, you have it mostly right. I think it was always intended to be in print. I talked to Eric at Image before we even launched, and we were always going to do it in print. And Substack people knew that going in. But so yeah, we have just done the last, chapter 6 went up with it, which is issue 4 just this week. So yeah, we've been running it on the Substack, but this is the big print debut for most readers. We have a really great, if small, sort of following on the Substack. It's been really fun to sort of like test it out in that environment. But yeah, we're excited for tomorrow's the big test, right?
Yep.
Can you talk about breaking up the issues a little bit? Because like you said, there's 6 chapters. You're putting them in 4 issues. What's the difference between taking it from online on the Substack to moving it into the print edition? What were the challenges there?
Well, so I think initially the challenges were really tough. I think probably a little more on me than on Meredith, in the sense that I just had to make different choices about where to break the script, because we thought people were going to want it in smaller weekly installments. But we actually, once the Substack readership had settled in a little bit, we actually just did a poll. We're like, hey, they're the ones subscribing to it. Let's just ask them, how do they want to ingest it? And most of them came back with that they'd rather read larger chunks monthly than a weekly thing, which was great for us because it meant we could just not have to try to meet both masters, you know? But it is part of the reason we ended up with such an oversized first issue, although I think that's great for us, especially because it's sort of, the writing is a little bit stripped down, and so I feel like if you can give more pages to help, especially with new world building, you know, to really like make people feel that world and get curious about it and excited and sort of invested. So I think it ended up benefiting us by giving us this sort of oversized issue that we probably wouldn't have planned for if we were doing it in just a traditional way. So it was sort of like happy accidents that ended up helping us out, I think.
On the note of world building, let me ask: did you start it with the story and the sort of the characters and build toward the larger world, or was it sort of wide world first? Because it feels like we're dropped into a place that has a lot of very specific things happening and rules, but we haven't explored too much yet.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the actual world building, I'll kick a lot of that over to Meredith because a lot of that really comes down to, so much of that comes down to her. I think you can't start something that has world building this intensive without exploring that and doing that work. But you are right that we've got a different, or I at least, and Meredith has agreed to come along. I've got an approach where I don't want to explain a lot of stuff. I want to excite you through some things Meredith's doing, and like we throw some weird words in there and some weird creatures and things like that. And so I want all of that to be like percolating and like getting people excited about things, but I don't want to explain every little thing. I want you to be sort of experiencing it on the fly, and the police procedural sort of gives us that path to cut through the world building. But hopefully, you know, so much of what Meredith's doing is so cool. I think it's really exciting people about some of the corners that we're not even getting to yet, you know?
Yeah. Well, Meredith, can you talk about your style a little bit here? Because this is not necessarily like a high fantasy book, but you do have elves, you do have mermaids and sirens, all these creatures. But what I really love about your style is it almost has this softer, rounded edges to it. So what was your approach?
I definitely have a background growing up with manga and anime, and later on the French comics, which are very animation appearing.
Cool.
And then sort of bringing a cartooning to that. It's, you know, style is not something you consciously end up at. It's like where you come, you end up as an accident, you know?
Well, let me say on that, like, I feel like the emotions we get out of your characters' faces specifically do a great job of also cutting into this larger story that we don't know too much context about. But as long as we can see how the characters are feeling, we ride. And I love that about the look that you have here.
Kelly was talking about excitement, and man, I am so excited tomorrow to talk about this book when we can finally talk about it. I was so moved. You know, we're dropped in the middle of action. I love all the characters. I love the pace of it. Everything that this is such a great and creative world that we're thrown into. Can you tell me a little bit about like how you guys first met, or like what was the kind of like a tone you agreed upon, or kind of like how these worlds collided a little bit, because it's really magical.
So Meredith and I did what was really my first project in comics, is called Heart in a Box. It's a little Dark Horse graphic novel that we did together, and we met each other through Sophie Campbell, who I was a huge fan of, still am, and it was like 2007, 2008, 2009, those years, I was like blogging and stuff, and Sophie Campbell and I were really becoming friends, and I knew she probably wasn't going to be able to draw a book of mine, especially because she was already a writer in her own right. At that point, she was doing Wet Moon and everything, but I had this book, and she had looked at it and was excited about it, Heart in a Box. And I was like, help me find an artist. And she gave me a couple names, and Meredith was at the top of the list. And when I looked at Meredith's stuff, I was like, yeah, that's it. I was like, if this girl's into me, like, that's a fit.
Yeah.
So
Kelly set everything up. She put the ball in motion.
Well, in this case, Sophie did, but and then we just came together, and honestly, we work really well together. Meredith's style isn't, necessarily what like Marvel and DC big two comics want on their punching books. So, I mean, although I would personally love to see that, but it hasn't always been that we've been able to work together, but we did some Gem together when I was doing Gem and the Holograms, which was super fun. And yeah, she was the first name at the top of my list when I knew I was getting this Substack money, and I had this idea, which I'd been sitting on for a while, and I thought there were some things about it, because it was such a mishmash. It was like all my favorite things. I was like, let's put them all in the same book. Like, why can't sci-fi play with fantasy, and why can't fantasy play with detective procedural? Like, why? Nobody has convinced me that those things can't be done together. And so I just came into it with that in mind, and I really thought, I knew I could trust Meredith. I knew she was reliable. She was smart. I knew she was talented. I knew we worked well together. But I think most importantly, I felt like if she drew that book, I was pretty excited about what that was going to look like. Those weird things thrown together. I thought it wasn't going to look like traditional fantasy, but like I know how good she is with color, so I thought it might really turn up the like neo-noir aspect of it, and we might have something really special on our hands. And I think that's where we ended up. I think her work really speaks for itself on the visual impact. Is
well, and also like the nice thing about working with Kelly is she always asks me to do creatures or settings that I haven't thought about before. Like I probably would not have ended up in a neo-noir on my own, but
I'll drag you kicking and screaming.
I'm really pleased you did, because it's like I feel like I've definitely I'm really proud of everything that we've done with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Speaking of everything you've done with it, like how big or how are we getting this story? Are we getting a ton of issues all at once? Is it in chunks? Having read one, I need to know.
So you'll be getting it monthly from Image. It should be nice and reliable. We're working on 5 now, so we're well ahead. Everything's a little oversized, but not as much as issue 1. Not nearly as much as issue 1, which is like 50 some pages for $5. The other ones are more reasonably sized, 22, 23 pages, stuff like that. They should all be at the $4 price point. And then, so everyone should feel super comfortable through 6, which I feel like is a really great trade, because it's going to be like more like 7.5 or 8 issues by the time you're dealing with page count. But so we're gonna wrap up this murder mystery that you begin in issue 1. So like I want everyone to feel like it will be a complete story that will like stand on its own. But there's definitely, the way things end, it's a big hook for what's next.
Oh yeah. It is.
But I think what's next is a question mark. I don't want to talk about this too much. I feel like we just did a cast where I felt like I really talked about this too much. But, it's a little bit up to the readers how much we do. Like, how much you guys are in love with it or not sort of determines the fate of the book. I mean, we're definitely going through 6. That's all great. But if you want to see more,
well, I'm already,
that's how we'll know,
I'm already super in love with it.
Thank you.
That means a lot.
I did want to get back and ask you about the mishmash thing that you said a little bit. And I know that I mentioned there are mermaids in it, there are elves, there's the sci-fi things that you've talked about. I don't know how much you want to get into this, because, again, I know you want people to discover as they go along, but what are the rules? What was off limit? What was allowed in your mind in terms of being able to use in this fantasy world?
I don't know, Kelly, do we have rules?
Well,
I don't know that you've said no to me.
Yes and no. I mean, I feel like, as a writer, I feel like whenever you go into things, like no matter how much Bible you think you've done for something you're building, all of that to me is not written in ink until you bring your collaborator in. Because so what if I think this is cool? If she's like, yeah, but what if it's this? And I'm like, what? That's amazing. Like, so I think, until you get your collaborator in there, I mean, it's not my vision, it's our vision together. And she takes a roadmap I give her and she makes it into like the most glorious stuff. And so it would be foolish of me to like think I know, or to think that my idea is better. And so I would say a lot of that stuff, I had a roadmap, but it just really dramatically changed once Meredith came to the table, because and also, like there's a lot of stuff, the Black Cloaks are basically homicide detectives, and like that's a big thing that changed as we were working on it. Even before I brought it to Meredith, because the way I feel about cops has changed a lot over the last decade, and how do we talk about that? I still am always going to be interested in detective narratives and procedurals. That's not going to go away. But so how do we talk about that in a different way within this book? This world is very different than ours, but there are obviously a lot of political and class parallels. Race is handled differently because it less is about skin color and it's more about creature differences, right? But like, yeah, it's just about mixing all those things you love and like trying your best, I think, to discover the ways in which, like, what about setting a police detective in a fantasy narrative, like what does it get you that's interesting that you don't get in another? Like, I like to throw those little bombs in, a great example of something I didn't do that was all Meredith, but is one of my favorite little details, is that in issue 2 we see in a morgue, and she just drew all these cool freaking things into the morgue that were not in the script. Like, one of them was like closed and it like had a bell on it, because what if that creature, like, we don't know if that creature is really dead or not. So like,
oh, that's awesome.
Like just little stuff like that. Like, that's the way her mind works. That's at least a little bit the way my mind works. And so when you put it together with two people who are headed for the same goal, I mean, really magical things can happen. It's been great.
I follow up on that for you, Meredith. So then, when you're looking at that, like draw morgue, are you like morgue? What is your brainstorming process for adding those extra details?
Oh gosh.
Does the tool lead you, or are you like actually sitting and thinking about it before you get into it?
I knew I wanted, going specifically to the morgue scene, like I knew I wanted to imply. And I think Kelly had also pointed me in this direction, that we needed to push that this was not the average morgue. And what kind of problems would a fantasy world have in containing their dead, or supposed dead, or dead but might still come back.
And this is a little bit, I can't remember the order of how this happened, but the cover to number 3 is a mermaid tail with a toe tag on it, like spinning out of a morgue fridge. And when she first did that, it was not the mermaid tail, right? It was one of the other characters. It was a more normal character.
I think it was
and
just
I was
a pair
like,
of feet.
and I was like, am I crazy if this is even better if it's a mermaid tail?
No,
and
that's
Meredith was like, yes! And that's one of my favorite covers now. It's
I get so many compliments on the mermaid tail. Well, I get compliments and then I get, oh. I'm like, Little Mermaid did not meet
She
a good
didn't
end.
make it. She didn't make it.
While we're talking mermaids, let me ask you, like, is mermaids associated with sort of noir or sort of dark detective, usually a little bit on the brighter side. Why mermaids? What brought you there?
Well, first of all, mermaids are just the absolute best.
Very cool.
I mean, what better creature? Water and creatures, like, it's amazing. But I think I didn't want them to be typical mermaids. I'm really bored of like what we get in mermaids all the time. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What, she's a hot girl with a tail? Like, not interested. I mean I am interested because I love mermaids and that's all we've been getting for decades. So I mean,
they started as monsters, and then we sort of defanged them along the way.
Exactly. But I want to refang them. more. I mean, I'm not saying they should completely be monsters, but I mean, I think Meredith and I are very interested in monsters. It's one of many reasons why this book is a really fun fit for us. We're interested in that. What is a monster? What makes a monster? What are you saying by classifying someone that way? So, the mermaids are just another fun thing to subvert a little bit and play with, you know.
Hashtag refang the mermaids. Let's go.
Kelly, this is more of a general question. Maybe this just comes down to plotting and nothing else. But how do you approach a mystery? Do you come up with the end first and sort of plot backwards? Do you discover it as you go along? Is it meeting in the middle? Where do you fall?
Plot backwards. Plot backwards. 100%. Yeah. No, I'm not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to do it the other way. I really, for a long time, I was like, how does anyone write these? And then I was like, you idiot. They write it because they know the end. Like,
They know the end.
just start at the end and start working it backwards and figure out where the clues have to go, you know? I mean, honestly, like, not that every murder mystery is good. Plenty of them don't work and aren't bad or are bad storytelling, but yeah, that's the secret 100%. Like, you want to know why Batman's so smart? They start at the end. We start at the end and we work backwards.
It's so funny. That's so funny to think of the idea of writing a riddle on the front way, where you're like, what's a chair upside down? Oh god, this is hard. I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm even writing, like, knowing where you end, like, that anyone can juggle a murder mystery or any kind of mystery or riddle like that is, like, mind-boggling to me. It's something I myself have not cracked, and so I'm like, how did you figure out the little Rubik's Cube?
I mean, thank God. If Meredith cracks anything else, she'll be unstoppable. So I need her to stop learning now. So stay where you are.
All right.
Yeah, be thankful, Meredith. If you crack too many murder mysteries, you get much closer to committing an actual murder. So it's good.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
So I don't know if you can talk about this part, but now that it is at Image, are you still working on the Substack? Are there going to be more issues come there, or is it all coming out through Image at this point?
Yeah, we'll still be putting it out on Substack through its end, and I actually have a new book called The Cull that isn't on the calendar yet, but that's with Mattia DeUlius. That's another creator-owned book, and so that'll be on the Substack as well. I did actually I ended up pausing the Substack right now just because we're running a little behind on our deliverables. But that just means I'm still posting, we're still doing everything. It just means I paused everyone's payment because we're running a little bit behind and I want people to be getting, you know, the correct bang for their buck. I'm not here to take everybody's money and not give them anything. So yeah, it'll be continuing there. We'll be monthly from Image. I'm just finalizing issue 2 files with them right now. It's been a very big learning curve for me, but the book looks beautiful. I'm really happy with it. So
what is the biggest thing you learned then so far?
What, the Image stuff?
Yeah.
I wish I knew everything about graphic design and I didn't ever need anybody else's help. Not because I don't want people's help, but just because I find it very stressful to have to go, hey, you live 12 hours ahead of me, so I don't even know what time it is or what day it is, but now I'm emailing you because someone's telling me on this page we used 4C black instead of only black, and I don't even know what that means, and can you help me fix this file? You know, so like that stuff. I hate having to ask other people to help me, honestly. I just want to be able to do it myself, and that's not a great thing, and it's a weird thing because my favorite thing about comics is the collaboration, so you think I'd learn and get better at that, but yeah, I don't like not knowing I can't fix it on my own if I have to, you know?
Also the fun thing is, at least in the comic book industry, every printer deviates just a little bit, just enough. That it's always a new system. That you're just like, I have to relearn it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, Image is incredibly professional, and everyone there is so helpful and friendly and nice. And you know, I made a lot of apologies on the first issue where I'm like, okay guys, I really appreciate your help because I have no idea what I'm doing. But now I feel like we're on issue 2, so I need to look like somebody who learned some things over the last couple months. So we'll see. It's going okay. It's going okay.
Yeah, one issue. You don't need to learn that much in one issue.
Kelly, you always have a bunch of irons in the fire. What else are you working on right now?
Unfortunately, I have something really, really cool I'm working on, and script 1 is due for it this week. Oh my god, I'm not ready, but I cannot talk about it yet. I do not know when they're going to let me talk about it. It's very cool. It's characters I've never written before. I think people are going to be very pumped. I'm also finishing up this really fun Captain Marvel arc with the Brood and the X-Men. We're having a great time. The next issue, number 46, was guest penciled by Javier Pina, he's one of my faves. It's a beautiful issue. I'm super excited. We've also, I think the last issue of It's Jeff, which is a digital comic, it's coming out this month if it didn't come out last week already. But there's also a print edition coming out in March, so that's exciting. But honestly, a lot of my time is still going to The Cull. Finishing up this first arc of Black Cloak and this book, The Cull, I'm doing with Maddie Adeulius, which we don't have that on the schedule yet with Image, but I would think maybe summer, ? So
Nice.
It's a really beautiful book. Like when that comes out, you have to check it out because I'm blown away whenever Kelly shares anything.
It's incredible. Meredith saw issue 1 because she's doing a variant cover for us, and she came back and she was like, so he really knows what he's doing with colors, huh? And I was like, yeah, that's an understatement. He's incredible. But I have to say, one of my favorite things, and it wasn't really deliberate, but I am happy with how it worked out. They're so different. Highly realistic painted style from Madia, but like super sort of more cartoony, abstracted style with Meredith that's more like angles and colors and things. And I sort of love that they're so different.
Yeah,
like
that's great.
Like let's celebrate it all, all the edges of the spectrums.
I mean, I imagine it's great for you to think in both sort of styles as you're moving these stories through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, maybe that would be normally like, maybe that would be like a block, like a mental block, but like I feel so comfortable with both Meredith and Madia that I can just close my eyes and like sort of picture what they're going to do, although they're always surprising me, so.
I mean, I would guess it would help you keep the story, your brain separated from the,
yeah,
so you're not sort of...
I think the stories are very different, so that probably helps too. I mean, there is a supernatural sort of science fiction element to The Cull as well, but it's basically set in our world with like one sort of twist as opposed to, hey, let's build a whole new civilization whole cloth. We have time for that, right?
Shouts to Alex Segura in the comments saying The Cull looks amazing. So he's already...
There you go.
Alex is so great. Alex is so great.
I also want to shout out your Black Widow run, Kelly. One of my faves.
Thank you so much. I loved it too. I do have a pitch going in to Marvel for sort of continuing that, but I'm very concerned that too much time has passed. And I also don't really want to do it if we can't sort of bring back the original team, and that gets harder and harder the further out we get. Not Marvel's fault, but just, sort of the reality of how it goes. Yeah.
Well, I'll put my little prayers behind my pitch as it flies into the inbox.
Thank you.
Excellent. Both of you, thank you so much for coming on. Congrats on the book. It's awesome. I can't wait for people to check it out, and I can't wait to read more issues because I love the first one.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the support, and say bye to Pete for us.
Yeah, no, he's so upset. His power went out actually somehow.
Yeah. Oh no!
But he was so excited to talk to you both about this book. So he's going to be sad about it.
Tell him we appreciate it. I hope his power comes back on. A lot of us have been there this winter so far.
Yeah.
Not great.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
There we go. Okay, I think we got that figured out. Check out Black Cloak. Coming out tomorrow from Image Comics from Kelly Thompson and Meredith McClaren. It is awesome. Do not miss it at all. And we are going to move on with our next section, which is my favorite section because you all make it up. It's your audience questions. And for audience questions, all you got to do is drop a question here in Crowdcast and Q&A. Unfortunately, YouTube went down as well. We're having tech disasters all over the place tonight.
Oh, wow.
But we do have a question over...
Maybe Pete runs YouTube secretly. That would make a lot of sense.
I think so. But we do have a question over there before it went down from Prime NRG. Well, when it comes to viewer questions, can you answer one for me? I'm visiting NYC for the first time in a few weeks and curious to know of any must-go-to comic book spots.
Ooh, comic book spots. You mean like the Statue of Liberty where all of the Spider-Men fought?
Yeah, I guess like that. I assume more along the lines of like you got to go to Midtown Comics,
great store,
because it's a great store. Forbidden Planet is my childhood store. You should check that out. Any War Comics in Brooklyn is very nice. In terms of other comic book stuff, I don't know what's open at the current time necessarily.
I know it's in pandemic. A lot of, or at least some places closed. I did hear about a good comic book shop that I haven't visited yet in Brooklyn. That I think someone, maybe you, Alex, was giving me shit because I hadn't gone there.
Anywhere Comics?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's like around the block from you.
Yeah, it is close, and I gotta go there. I didn't think of it till just now. I mean, I've sadly converted to mostly reading digitally, so I don't go to money comic book shops anymore.
Anyone Comics,
anyone. Someone just handed me a paper comic. I was in an office yesterday, and they were like, "Check this out." I was like, "Oh my god." It's so different. I was, and I have my old comics sitting here, but a new comic printed on like different paper. Wow.
And isn't there? I actually don't know that I've ever been to this, or at least I saw it once and then they moved it. But the Captain America statue, isn't that still in Brooklyn somewhere?
No idea. I don't think I've ever visited that.
Cool. There's also that creepy comics warehouse in Sunset Park that Nat keeps recommending. I went to the stairway once and I was like, "This is scary. I'm not going up here."
I love that you got scared of going
scary.
into it. I mean, truly, there are comics. There are random comic book shops all over the place that you can just wander past. I mean, if you're looking to just go to sort of where all the comics are, like Midtown has sort of most things, so that's a good spot to check out if you want to just really get into something that you can't find at a smaller comic book shop.
Why don't we go to some questions here on Crowncast? This is from Pablo D. Martinez. Quantum Mania has a great second trailer. Thoughts?
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit. We get a little MODOK reveal here, right?
Yeah, there's a MODOK reveal. Of course, we get a lot more of Kang. We get Kang versus Ant-Man. I'll tell you what, I don't begrudge anybody liking this trailer. It's definitely a good, solid superhero trailer. It is not what I personally want. I do not want the end game of Ant-Man movies, which is what Peyton Reed has said he was trying to do. He was a little tired of, and then we have a fun lark of an Ant-Man movie later on. He wants to do something that's big and important. So good for him. And clearly I know people are going to be into that. They're like, "Oh man, Kang's going to kill Ant-Man. Isn't that cool?" I don't want to watch Ant-Man die. One of my favorite things about Ant-Man and the Wasp was how kind it was, and the fact that they fought Ghost, but ultimately are like, "Are you okay? Can we help you with anything?" And that was the solution. I thought was awesome. Maybe that's what we're getting from the movie. That is not what we're getting from the trailer.
Well, and let's remember that back when Ant-Man started, it was sort of brought to us, the people, as like, look, we're doing a comedy. We do different genres in the MCU, and we're doing a comedies, and it's going to be fun. And it did a little bit of that, maybe not as much as they had initially planned. There were some creative changes at the top of the movie. And then now it feels like this movie is like, this movie's more serious than anything else, which is the cardinal sin of comic book movies. It's why DC can't figure their shit out, because it's so self-serious. The Marvel Secret Weapon was not taking themselves too seriously, and this movie feels like it is Ant-Man, like Principal Ant-Man.
It's definitely, I don't know if it's a response to Phase 4 and people being a little mixed about some of that stuff. That's potentially what's going on there. So they're selling this as like, here we go. We're beginning. Here comes Kang. Get ready. This is the big Phase 5. It all starts here, which is also a very comic booky thing to do. I do have a suspicion it's still going to be goofy, because we got goofy stuff in the first half of the first trailer. There's some potentially goofy looking visuals, that we also have the very classic muddy, weird scape that's all been CGI'd, and they've done it all out of green screen. The scape,
like scapes, like scapes that you cook with.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So I don't know. I was not into it, but I'm glad for anybody who is. This is from Edward Doherty. Do you have any thoughts or analysis on the recent talking point of comic creators claiming they haven't been paid by comic companies in a timely fashion? Well, I don't know if this is a recent talking point so much as a perennial talking point from the history of comics. But what do you think about this, Justin?
I mean, I think that's an ongoing thing, and I think we hear from comic book creators a lot, but that's like sort of a culture or a business wide thing when it comes to paying creatives in a timely fashion. It is often a lower priority to pay the creatives because they are sort of willing to wait a little bit more than like the person that brings the camera to the set or like something like that, like the more production-based things. Like you have to pay the printer if you want the comic. The creator will wait a little bit longer. So it's unfortunate. It's something that I feel like everyone goes through phases of being a little bit better about it and then a little bit worse and better and worse. It's always better for the corporation to hold the money as long as they can, and that's the creators suffer when that is what happens.
Totally agree. This is several things from Stray Bullet. We discussed this in the Slack a little today, and I was wondering if anyone else had kept reading We Only Find Them When They're Dead, and if you have, what the F is going on? Also, all hail giant MODOK head. I will say, we touched on this briefly with the Ant-Man Quantumania trailer. MODOK head, great. All into that.
MODOK head, great. What happens when that head talks or does anything besides just be in the back of a shot?
Well,
that's going to be crazy.
The speculation, which I think is probably right on par, is I don't remember the name of the actor, but Darren Cross, the character, the villain for the first movie, Yellow Jacket. We recently rewatched Ant-Man, and what happens when he gets sucked into the quantum realm is his arms and legs get sucked in first, and I think his head stays large, and then there you go. So I think it's going to be him, and I think it's going to be goofy and silly, but yes, it might also look terrible. I guess we'll see what happens. Sorry, I took away the question too fast. The actual question about it is We Only Find Them When They're Dead. Have you kept up with that one?
That's the Al Ewing, Gods book. I have not. That book, I think we read the first 2 issues for the stack. And after a while, I was like, I don't know what's happening here. And I haven't picked it up. I would. Al Ewing, I feel like there's always something going on that's worth reading in those books.
Yeah. I also didn't keep up with it because I thought it was beautiful, well written, but I wasn't quite sure what was going on. Past the meeting, God meeted the first issue. I was like, this is cool. And then subsequent issues, I was like, I can't follow this. I'm sorry. But there you go. Last but not least, we got here from Kevin. What are some of your favorite subversions or deconstructions of classic tropes in comics or other media?
Ooh.
His favorite subversions or deconstructions of classic tropes? Well, Watchmen, for one.
Oh, wow. Good answer. Wow. I can't believe you thought of that. That's such a smart answer there. Because, the good guys are sort of the bad guys.
Yeah. Subversions of classic tropes.
I mean, it's one of those questions that it takes your brain a second to clock the sort of larger, very big abstract question. But I mean, I feel like we've had so many versions of subverting the secret identity thing. It keeps happening where it's we reveal the secret identity to the world, deal with the after effects, and then it gets all put back in the box. And that moving back, I like the tropes that we can fully subvert and then commit to the changes. And there aren't as many of those.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for that necessarily other than Watchmen, which is now stuck in my head. Edward Doherty says, I did it 35 minutes ago. Kevin says non-superhero tropes. I don't know. You're not helping, Kevin. I'm sorry.
You mean human tropes?
Yeah.
Like when people looking for love, seeking love.
I'm not sure. Trope. This is a bad answer. I'm sorry. And that's it for your audience questions.
Just pure apologies.
And normally we do trivia, but Pete's power is out, as we said. So I think we got to jump ahead to what we're looking forward to.
There's not much after that, though, Alex.
I know. We're kind of wrapping it up here. Justin, what are you looking forward to?
I mean, legitimately, I would say Black Cloak #1 coming out is so good, and Oh, look, Pablo's saying he's got his hand up, but will be back next week to do it.
Great. Keep it up all week, Pablo. Never put that hand down.
And we'll know if you take it down. We will know.
Yes. That is great. Were you going to throw out something else? Go ahead.
I was going to say Mary Jane and Black Cat over at Marvel. I love Jed MacKay's Black Cat stuff. I think I've talked about that a lot. The Dark Web crossover has been pure insanity across all of the books. The main title feels as wild as any of the spin-off books, but this book is doing all of that wild, weird stuff in limbo, but also putting a great relationship question between Black Cat and Mary Jane, who've developed a friendship over a few story arcs, and Black Cat is sort of dating Peter Parker, and Mary Jane is not, and Black Cat, in the middle of almost dying at the hands of Belasco, is struggling with, should I tell her that I'm sort of seeing her ex? And it's real. I love that. I love the way that Jed MacKay is able to be wild and weird at the same time, getting a core emotional question out on the story.
Totally agree. That crossover has been great. I'll throw it out to Spy Superb, #1 from Dark Horse Comics by Matt Kindt. He's going to be back on the show in, I believe, 2 weeks at this point to talk about this book, and it does not disappoint. Wild and trippy. Also, really enjoying Dark Ride from Image Comics by Joshua Williamson and Andre Bresson. It's a really messed up story set in a horror-themed amusement park where, of course, some horror stuff is going on. And
Human Target #10, let's talk about. It's setting up for the finale, it feels like, and it is coming together in a way that you could have sat around and maybe predicted some of these things that were happening, but it's so satisfying to read it as it comes together.
Yeah. All those books and many more are going to be in our Stack podcast that goes Wednesday, 9 a.m. in the Comic Book Club feed and its own dedicated Stack feed. And folks, that is it for this week's show. A couple of people to thank. Thank you, Kraig Rasmussen, for coming on to talk about Zoop's Odds and Ends. Be sure to check that out when that launches on January 17th. Also, thank you to Kelly Thompson and Meredith McClaren for coming on to talk about Image Comics Black Cloak, which comes out monthly starting tomorrow and is awesome. Next week on the show, we're going to have Eddie Klinker will be here to talk about space pilots. Also, Paul Allure, who wrote our much beloved run of G.I. Joe, is going to be here to talk about Midnight Presents, the Butterfly House, a new project of his is coming out from Zoop. There you go. Check out the Doom Room or Doom Patrol podcast. We've wrapped up the first half of the season on that. Also, Marvel Vision, our Marvel podcast. We have a bunch of recaps that we've done of the Marvel movies you can check out. Patreon.com/Comic Book Club to support the show and all the shows we do. Don't forget to subscribe and follow on Apple, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice. At Comic Book Live on Twitter, Comic Book Club Live on Instagram and TikTok, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, good night.
Good night. Long live Pete.
And occasionally they let their special guest speak. So grab your written hammer. Don't be late for it, 'cause their girlfriends can barely tolerate it. Coming back round. Coming back. Coming back.
Pete.
Woo! What a show!
Well, good night, everybody.